Hey everyone, I'm back. Been like I think 3 weeks since I uploaded a video, or 2 weeks, but I feel like I really need to start getting into the groove of uploading more often. I have some reading vlogs planned, some tags I want to do. There's a tag that Erin Go Reads tagged me in that I want to do. If you're not subscribed to her yet, definitely go check her out. She's one of my new favorite booktubers to follow, and she doesn't have that many subscribers, so definitely go check her out. I'll leave the link in the description down below. I feel like all that gets put up on here are book hauls and wrap-ups lately, or TBRs, but I do like making them and I do like watching them, so those are still gonna be coming out. So this is going to be a wrap-up video. I'm going to show you all the books I read in January and February. So I read 17 books in total. I'm hoping to read more in March because I have a lot more time now. Also, another update is that I've been reading a lot on my Kindle. I got this thing a few years ago. I just knocked out a bunch of books. I got this thing a few years ago and I've been reading on it more often. I think it's just easier, especially reading when I go to bed, because my husband's trying to sleep and I don't want to keep like any lights on, or even like my little book light or my lamp on my nightstand is still way brighter than the Kindle. So I really like the Paperwhite and reading it at night, so I've been reading a lot from it. I've been checking out a lot of ebooks from the library. So that being said, I read a lot of ebooks in January and February. I only have a few physical copies here that I read, and the rest were from the library. Anyways, I feel like I've been talking a lot, so let's just get to the wrap up. Some of these books I won't say much about because honestly I read them in January and it's March now, so I just want to show what I've been reading, because I feel like since I skipped the January wrap up, you haven't been really able to see what I read. So yeah, let's get to it. Some of these I honestly, like I said, don't remember. So the first book I read in January was On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. And it's the same author as The Hate You Give, which I really enjoyed. If you love The Hate You Give, I think that you might love this book even more. I think it's more underrated too. I don't see a lot of people talk about it, but On the Come Up is about this girl and she is trying to be a rapper, and I listened to it on audiobook from the library. And it was so good. I am not an audiobook person, but this was the best audiobook I've ever heard. And I think that it sounds better than it reads because you get to hear her rap. I feel like that's what made it really good. So I gave that book 5 stars. Definitely recommend if you haven't read it yet, especially if you love The Hate You Give. So the next book I read was Dominicana, and this one is about a girl, and her family has like a family friend that offers to basically marry her and take her back to New York. And her family like really wants her to move over there, so then eventually she can like bring the rest of her family over there. This was a pretty good read and it was pretty fast paced, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Red at the Bone, and this one I listened to on audiobook, which I think was a mistake because I felt like I couldn't get into it on audiobook, but it was written beautifully like her other books. So I definitely recommend reading it versus listening to it on audiobook. I think I recommend that with all of Jacqueline Woodson's books. You should definitely read them, which is something that I didn't do, and I didn't do with her last book either. So I definitely need to stop listening to her books on audiobook, but I ended up giving that book a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was True Grit, and it's about this girl who is trying to avenge the death of her father. And I actually haven't seen the movie, so I probably should do that, but this is like an old copy that I found at the library book sale, and it's a pretty short book. I would say it's worth the read. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was called Heavy, and I actually listened to this one on audiobook, but I think the audiobook was pretty good. So if you don't really like audiobooks, I definitely recommend listening to this one. So Heavy is a memoir, and it is about a heavy black man, and I feel that we don't get that perspective in a lot of stories, and even in real life people don't want to talk about it, I feel like. But this one was recommended to me by Dee Dee, I think it was, and I also saw that Erin Go Reads gave it 5 stars and Dee Dee gave it 5 stars. One of the most emotional, raw books that I've ever read. I feel like it was just so deep and heavy, like the title. Like I feel like as I was listening to it, there was this weight on my shoulders because I just felt I don't know, I just felt for him. Even though I don't understand where he's coming from, I just really like felt for him. So highly recommend that one, and if you can find the audiobook at your library, I definitely recommend listening to it. And like I said, I gave that one a 4 stars, but now that I think about it, I think it should be 4.5 stars. The next book I read was Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware, and I buddy read this with Rachel from The Shades of Orange. I feel like she's like the best horror booktuber out here, and we've been friends on booktube for a few years now. So if you're not familiar with her channel and you love horror, but you also like science fiction and thrillers and stuff and more under the radar books, definitely check her out. She reads mainly horror, but she also reads other genres, so I will leave the link to her channel in the description below. So we read that together, and I just did not like Turn of the Key. I felt like it was boring and not that much happened. So I don't know, I think it's really crazy that a lot of people on booktube have it as their favorite book of 2019, and it's a 5-star read and everything. So I was really excited to read it, but it was very slow. If I wasn't buddy reading it with Rachel, I probably would have DNF'd it. Rachel did mention that I would probably like Lock Every Door by Riley Sager better, and that is true. I will talk about that in a minute, but I also read that book. But Turn of the Key almost put me in a reading slump, and I really don't think that I'll be giving Ruth Ware any more chances, because I think it was Death of Mr. Westaway was really boring to me too, and In a Dark Wood was her only decent book that I read. Like, it wasn't amazing. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I guess if you have a favorite or you think there's one that would convince me otherwise, let me know in the comments down below, because I am just like losing faith in Ruth Ware. So the next book I read was Poet X, and I gave that book 4 stars. I won't go into that much detail, but I feel like that was a really popular book when it came out, and I just never got around to reading it. So I finally read it, and I listened to this one on audiobook too. It was a pretty good audiobook, and I ended up giving the book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was a bad read, and it was Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I read Normal People, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, I think. I feel like Normal People was way more fast-paced, even though I didn't love it, like, and it was super hyped up, and I probably wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend that one for like a beach read, or if you're in a slump or something, because I feel like it was really like fast-paced YA and not really adult fiction. I don't know, it felt really YA-ish. So with Conversation with Friends, it did feel like it was more adult fiction, but it was also really boring. So that's the con of it. It just wasn't good. It's about this girl that basically is having an affair with a married man. I don't know, it was so boring. Like, nothing really happened in that book. It was really boring, and also put me in another slump. So I gave that book 2 out of 5 stars, I think, and I don't recommend it. So now going into February, I read Lock Every Door. This one was so good. Rachel was so right. I loved this one way better than Turn of the Key. 100 times better. If you didn't like Turn of the Key, but you're looking for something with like similar creepy vibes, check out Lock Every Door. This was my first Riley Sager book. I don't know why I didn't read him sooner. I have checked out books by him at the library, like Final Girls, before. I think it was like 2 years ago or something when it first came out, and I just like never got around to it, and it never was a priority. But I just love him so much now because I've officially read all his books. Stay tuned for my next wrap up. Everyone knows about this already, so I won't go into it since I am very late to the game, because this book was all over booktube when it first came out. So literally everyone has read it, I feel like, and everyone gave it such good ratings, and I just thought it's so hyped up. Don't like hyped up books, or it doesn't live up to my expectations, but this one definitely did, and I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next one I read I haven't seen much about, and it's called Unpregnant. And this one, I don't remember where I saw it. I think it was on just Goodreads that I saw it was coming out. But I recommended my library to purchase it, and they did, so I was first on the list to get it on ebook, and it was so good. I read it in like 2 days, I think. Definitely a fast-paced read. So it's about this girl that's in high school, and she gets pregnant, and she decides to get an abortion, hence the name Unpregnant. But I feel like you should really stay away from the synopsis, because there's something in there about her boyfriend. So I feel like they shouldn't have mentioned that in the synopsis. So definitely recommend this one. Do not read the synopsis. Go into it blindly. Well, not super blindly, because you know it's about a girl that gets pregnant and is trying to get an abortion. And also the this book is really, really underrated because I don't think I've seen anyone on BookTube talk about this book, but I definitely recommend it, and I think it's one of the best YA books that I've read in a long time. So after that, I read The Last Time I Lied because I was hooked. Like, after I read Lock Every Door, I had to read everything that Riley Sager has written. So Ashley and I decided to buddy read it, and she is also a booktuber here, so if you haven't checked out her channel, definitely check it out. I'll link it in the description below, but she hasn't uploaded in a little bit because I know she's been busy, but we talk all the time, and we decided to buddy read The Last Time I Lied, and we both really enjoyed it. And again, I'm also late on this book, so you probably know all about it, but I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And I feel with Riley Sager, he has like all these twists and turns, and then you're like, oh, okay, kind of predictable, but then he has like another twist at the end that kind of just surprises you. So I really love that about him, unlike Ruth Ware's twist, where it's just like kind of like one big twist at the end. He just like gives you all these twists and turns throughout the book and keeps you hooked. Like, you will read his books in a day. I know he's like super popular, but if you are someone that hasn't gotten around to reading him yet and just doesn't want to like believe the hype, believe it, because his books are so good. The next book I read was No Exit. Me and Ashley like were hooked on thrillers and like Riley Sager, but we didn't have another Riley Sager to read at the time, and she had checked out No Exit from the library, and this book was just the most ridiculous thriller that you'll ever read. Saw that a lot of people gave this book low ratings because they said like that would never happen in real life and it's so unrealistic and too many things happen, too many like twists and turns, and it just got more ridiculous and more ridiculous. But I think that's what made it fun. So if you're someone that dissects a thriller and just looks at every single detail and tries to figure out like what sounds realistic and what doesn't, if you're that person, you're not gonna like this book. But if you're just like trying to read a thriller just to have fun, then this is definitely one for you. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and it was such a fast-paced read. Another one that you could probably read in a day or two. The next book I read was Dear Edward. I was really excited for this one because the premise was just like right up my alley. It's about a boy that's in an airplane crash and he's the sole survivor. So this book is definitely different than I thought it would be. My expectations were really high for this one, so I feel like that's why I gave it a low rating. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, but I do recommend checking it out if you're into adult fiction. The next book I read is I Will Save You by Matt Della Pena. He is one of my favorite YA authors. Actually, looking at my shelf, I think he's my favorite YA author. So not only are his books diverse and relatable, like even as an adult, I feel like it's relatable, especially if you speak Spanish. This one doesn't have as much like Spanish in it and is not as relatable as his other books, but it was still really good. So this one is about a boy that leaves his group home and he kind of runs into an old friend, and it's just like a coming of age book, and it was really good, and I like the ending and definitely recommend it if you're looking for a diverse author. And I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. So I almost forgot about this one that I read because it's so small, but I read The Education of Augie Merasty, and this is about his time in a residential school. It is a memoir, and if you're interested by this subject or you want to learn more about residential schools, I definitely recommend this. I saw some people gave this a low rating because the book is so short, but we have to remember that this is his memoir, and once you read the beginning, you'll understand why he couldn't write more or why there wasn't more to the story. From reading like the introduction in the beginning of the book from David Carpenter, which is the guy that put the memoir together and talked to Augie Merasty, he kind of explains that, like I said, and I just was more understanding to why it was like this. If it didn't have that in the beginning, I feel like I would have gave it a lower rating, but it just made it more impactful, and I do recommend reading this. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read was I'm Fine and Neither Are You, and this was another buddy read. I was on like a buddy read roll, and I really enjoy buddy reading. This one I buddy read with Alexa, and I'll link her channel down below too. I've been friends with her for a few years too on BookTube. She's also someone that I feel like is underrated, so if you haven't checked out her channel, definitely check out her channel. I'll put it in the description below. Her content is so good, and you definitely should check her out. So the book is about this woman, and she's married and she has kids, but something happens with her best friend. I won't say what, because when I was reading the synopsis again today, I realized that it doesn't really say what happens, but something happens that makes her and her husband realize, like, we need to do better. So they each make a list of what they want the other person to do, and then you also have to be like completely honest about it. That might not make a lot of sense right now, but if you read the book, it'll make sense. It was definitely a good read. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was funny, it was sad, it gave you all the emotions, and I will definitely be reading more by this author. I've read a book by her before, I don't remember the title, and I remember I read it in a day. So this is another book that you could probably read in a day or two. So if you're in a slump or you want a beach read or something, this is the perfect read, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. We're almost done here. The last book I read was What Alice Forgot. This was for my In Real Life book club, and I really enjoyed it. Actually, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, because I had high expectations because of Big Little Lies. I really loved that book and finished it in like a day because I was so hooked. And this book I thought was a little longer than it should have been. I think it was like almost 500 pages, but I still couldn't put it down because I really was invested and really wanted to know what was happening. So this is about this woman named Alice. She ends up bumping her head and thinking that she's 29 again when really she's 39. So she has lost 10 years of her memory. So definitely recommend if you like the author or if you've read Big Little Lies. This was also a fun read. So let me know if you've read any of these, or if you plan on reading any of these, or if you want to do any buddy reads. Definitely add me on Goodreads or look me up on Goodreads. I keep up to date with the books I own on there and the ebooks available in my library and all that stuff. I have everything shelved on my Goodreads. So speaking of buddy reads, let me quickly just mention my March TBR and what it's looking like, so that you can kind of get an idea of what I'm reading in March. This way it'll be easier to plan out buddy reads if you want to do one. So if you want to buddy read any of these books, definitely comment down below. I feel like they're the best because you get to make new friends and you get to talk to someone about a book that you're reading at the same time. So let me quickly go through these books. We have 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson, Dear Sweet Pea by Julie Murphy, Little Woman, and I'm reading this with Ashley, and The Hypnotist Love Story, A $500 House in Detroit, and A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. That one seems like a really quick read. And then we have my physical copies of books. We have the archived, which I should be reading with Keisha, Red River Girl. Definitely want to read this month. I didn't get to read it last month or the month before that, so if you want to read this one, let me know. This is an underrated one, so I'm really excited to read it, and it's What the Eyes Don't See, about the crisis in Flint, Michigan. Another one I really want to read is Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King. Definitely hoping to read this in March so that I can read The Outsiders in April, because I heard that The Outsiders, the book, has spoilers for Mr. Mercedes, so I definitely want to read this. The Shining Girls is another one that I've been meaning to read for the past like 3 months, but I haven't gotten to. The Secret History, another one that I want to get to. I didn't get to it last month, but hoping to get to it this month. And then another one that's been on my radar and on my shelf for years is Let Me In. But if nobody wants to read any of these, then I'll still be reading these as my March TBR. But yeah, also let me know in the comments down below like what other videos you want to see from me. Like I said, reading vlogs are coming soon and some tags are coming soon. So let me know what other videos you want to see, and I will see you all in the next video.